few months ago, I made a video about the largely unknown 6th D-Day beach, codenamed Band, link in the end screen. But other aspects of D-Day also remain largely unknown. Perhaps the best example is the subject of this video, the forgotten first landing on the 6th of June 1944. It didn't occur on any of the 5 invasion beaches, Omaha, Utah, Sword, Juno, or Gold. In fact, it was not even on the mainland of France, but it was to be the first Allied landing on French soil by sea on D-Day. Ile Saint-Marcouf consists of 2 small islands just off the Normandy coast. In fact, right in the path of the proposed US landings at Utah Beach. Throughout history, the islands have been strategic footholds. Emperor Napoleon I heavily fortified the islands, which have always been uninhabited by civilians. The main construction being a fort on the larger island with 48 cannons and a 500-man garrison. Later, a lighthouse was built atop the fort. When the Germans occupied France from 1940 onwards, the islands would probably become part of the Atlantic Wall defences. That was certainly what the Allies thought. The Germans demolished the lighthouse shortly after taking over. Confusingly for those studying D-Day, there is another site also called Marcouf. This is a German heavy gun battery established at Crisbec within the commune of Saint-Marcouf, but this position was on the mainland further north from the islands. When the Allies were preparing the Operation Overlord landing plan, the Saint-Marcouf Islands figured prominently. Allied intelligence believed that the old Napoleonic fort had been converted into a German observation post. This had been partially confirmed in May 1944, when German troops had been photographed on the larger island during pre-invasion aerial photo reconnaissance of the landing areas. Intelligence also assumed that the Germans had a facility on the islands to control electrically fired defensive sea mines laid in the Bay of Seine, a serious hazard to the invasion armada. Worse still, it seemed likely that the Germans may have concealed artillery on the islands that could bombard the US 4th Infantry Division as it came ashore at Utah. It was therefore decided that before the landings at Utah Beach could commence, any German troops and facilities on the Saint-Marcouf Islands must be neutralized. The task was assigned in planning to troops of the US 4th Cavalry Reconnaissance Regiment. It was a potentially difficult task of capturing the islands that also lay within range of the large German guns at Crisbec. The American landing force would consist of a platoon each from the 4th Cavalry's 4th and 24th Squadrons, a total of 132 lightly armed men under the command of Lieutenant Colonel E.C. Dunn. Dunn's orders were to effect a landing at 0430 hours 6th of June 1944, a full 2 hours before the main landings commenced on Utah Beach. However, in the light of how little Allied intelligence actually knew about the suspected German presence on the islands, it was deemed prudent to firstly send in a small reconnaissance detachment to mark the beach for the landing craft carrying the main body of Dunn's little command. 4 volunteers came forward. The party consisted of Corporal Harvey Olson of Troop A, 4th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, along with a private of the same troop, and Sergeant John Zanders and a private of Troop B. They formed a UDT, an underwater demolition team. They would travel light, armed only with combat knives. Some training was conducted in England, the men becoming competent with small black rubber boats and stealthy, silent insertion by night onto a potentially hostile shore. The training was tough, including being dropped from a boat some distance from the beach and swimming into the shore. The only other equipment the team would carry were torches, so they could signal the main invasion force to commence landing the rest of Colonel Dunn's force on the islands. Olson and his companions, working as 2 pairs in 2 rubber boats, paddled in towards the coast of the larger island, paddling through heavy surf and passing over the large submerged sea mines the Germans had sown around the islands, until they judged themselves to be about 100 yards from the blacked-out coast. The Americans dropped into the cold water and used their knives to slash and deflate the rubber boats before swimming the final distance to the beach. Hauling themselves gingerly up the beach, all was quiet. There was no movement ashore, apart from seabirds. But they had to move carefully, as the beach had been liberally sown with landmines by the Germans. Clearing a path, using their knives to prod the sand, the Americans approached the old fort. Nothing. No Germans. No secret fortifications, just mines and the occasional piece of abandoned German equipment. Olson and his men moved to the beach and began signalling to the landing ships standing off, one of dozens of such craft waiting to launch the invasion onto Utah Beach. Within 30 minutes or so, a small group of landing craft made an assault landing as the first streaks of dawn began to appear at the start of the longest day. The 132-man invasion force from the 4th Cavalry Regiment quickly secured both islands without any resistance. However, though the initial landings were unopposed, this soon changed as daylight revealed U.S. troops on the islands to German observation posts at the Marcouf battery ashore at Criesbeck. The battery was manned by a naval coastal artillery unit commanded by Oberleutnant Felton Ohmsen, and they had 3 210mm Czech guns, 2 in concrete emplacements. It was one of the most powerful coastal batteries in the area, able to hit targets up to 19 miles or 30 kilometers away. The battery was the first to sight the Allied invasion armada at 5 a.m., 30 minutes after the first Americans had successfully landed on the Marcouf Islands. At 5:52 a.m., the battery commenced firing at Allied warships, targeting the cruisers USS Tuscaloosa and Quincy, and the battleship USS Nevada. One of the guns also began landing shells on the San Marcouf Islands, the 4th Cavalry Force scrambling for cover. Several shells struck the island. The combination of shells and landmines killed 2 Americans and wounded 17. The German battery then scored a direct hit on the destroyer USS Corry, which was helping to provide fire support for the US landings at Utah Beach. Hit several times by shells, she sank, 24 of her crew being killed and 60 wounded. The loss was later attributed to a mine, without referring to the crew's own reports of the sinking. Concentrated battleship fire eventually knocked out 2 of the 3 guns at Criesbeck. But it would take US ground forces until the 11th of June 1944 before the battery was taken. Even then, Olson and 78 of his men managed to break through US lines and escape. Olson was later awarded the Knight's Cross for his efforts. Corporal Olson, who was the first American to set foot on French soil by sea on D-Day, was promoted to sergeant and received the Silver Star for the brave and arduous initial landing. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon, details in the description box below.